Hey guys, before the video starts and before people rush to the comments, I just want to say that this is a Democratic dream scenario video. This is by no means a prediction for 2026, but rather the best case scenario for the Democratic Party in the midterm elections under Donald Trump. So with that out of the way, with that said, let's get started on this election night. Good evening and welcome to Election Night in America 2026. On this crucial midterm election night, we will see the first test of how voters across the country feel about the current Trump administration. Voters across the country are going out to their polls, voting for their senators, voting for their governors, their next representatives. This will be a very critical night for both the Democratic and Republican Party. We do have polling about how people feel about Donald Trump, but this is not always exactly reflected in how people vote. Only 30% of Americans approve of Donald Trump's performance in his second term. This is the lowest single CNN poll of Donald Trump's approval rating in his first term and his second term. This is a historically low point for the Trump administration. 30% approval, 68% disapproval or unfavorable opinion of the Trump administration. And it is now 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have our first poll closings of the night. In the state of Kentucky, in their Senate race, we can project that Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General, will replace Mitch McConnell in that Senate seat. However, in Georgia, it is too early to call. At this point, the incumbent Democrat Jon Ossoff is trying to defend his seat there. Meanwhile, in South Carolina, we have an interesting race brewing. The late-night host Stephen Colbert is running as a Democrat against the very unpopular Lindsey Graham. Of course, the electability of Stephen Colbert has never been tested. This is certainly a gamble for the Democratic Party. We will see if it turns out successful in this deep Republican state. In Virginia, the incumbent Democrat Mark Warner is trying to defend his seat. This is what the U.S. Senate looks like right now. Of course, we have 32 Democrats who are not up for re-election right now in the Senate, and we have 33 Republicans who are not up for re-election, plus one from Kentucky puts their number at 34. 51 Senate seats are needed for a majority. And taking a look at gubernatorial races now, we do have a projection in Vermont. Vermont, the one blue state with a Republican governor. That's Phil Scott running unopposed, extremely popular governor. In South Carolina, Nancy Mace, this is an open seat by the way, Nancy Mace, the U.S. representative, the Republican is trying to claim that seat against Jermaine Johnson, the Democrat. In Georgia, it is another very odd race where you have a former Republican, the former Republican Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Duncan, running against Burt Jones. And this is what the governor's map looks like right now. You have 5 Democrats not up for election, 9 Republicans not up for election, plus Phil Scott in Vermont puts Republicans at a lead at 10. And this is what the U.S. House of Representatives looks like right now. Not too many seats can be called yet, but Republicans have a lead 17-11. It is now time for the 7:30 p.m. poll closings in 3 states, Ohio, West Virginia, and North Carolina. We can make a projection now in Virginia. Quite a quick call here in Virginia. The incumbent Mark Warner will win another 6-year term in the Senate, defeating Kim Farrington. This is a much earlier call than it was for Kamala Harris winning the state in 2024. A huge win for Democrats there. In West Virginia, however, we can project that the incumbent Republican Shelley Moore Capito will return to the Senate. Meanwhile, in Ohio, it is yet another race to watch, a key race alert here in Ohio. The former Senator, Democrat Sherrod Brown, is trying to make a comeback. He ran for re-election in 2024, lost to Bernie Moreno. He is now trying to reclaim a Senate seat against the incumbent John Husted. And in North Carolina, we have the former Democrat governor, Roy Cooper, very popular, hoping to flip this North Carolina Senate seat against Michael Whatley, the Trump handpicked candidate. And this is what the U.S. Senate looks like now. Republicans claim a very narrow lead, 35-33. And looking at the gubernatorial races in Ohio, it is too early to call. Tim Ryan versus Vivek Ramaswamy. And in the U.S. House races, Republicans have taken an extraordinarily large lead. It is now 40-18, a 22-seat lead there. And let's take a look at the magic wall now in South Carolina in their very crucial Senate election that has become increasingly competitive in these last final weeks, this final stretch of the race. And Stephen Colbert does have a strong lead with 39% of all votes reported. He has a 9-point lead, 53% to 44%. That's 76,000 votes there in South Carolina. 40% of the vote, a big chunk of the vote is in. Stephen Colbert at a very comfortable lead. This may be more competitive than we thought going into the night. And let's take a look at Georgia in their Senate race. Jon Ossoff, the incumbent, trying to win re-election there. He has a very strong lead, but look at the map. He is ahead by 16 percentage points, 57-41 against the football coach Derek Dooley. But look at the map there. Lots of Republican counties in the southern portion of the state not reporting any votes yet, so it absolutely will get closer than it is right now. But will it be enough for Derek Dooley to stop Jon Ossoff? We will see. It is now time for the 8 p.m. poll closings across the country, from Oklahoma to Florida to crucial Pennsylvania to Maine. And we can now make many projections here. In the state of Massachusetts, Ed Markey, the Democrat, will win re-election. However, in Delaware, the Democrat will win re-election there, Chris Coons. And in New Jersey, Cory Booker will win another term to the Senate. That's crucial. This is an early call indicating a good margin in the end for Cory Booker. That's important. He will probably run for president next year in 2028. So that will be interesting to see how that plays into his 2028 bid. Meanwhile, in Illinois, Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor, has won Dick Durbin's seat. And in Rhode Island, Jack Reed will win another term, the Democrat. However, in Mississippi, the Republicans will keep this seat, Cindy Hyde-Smith winning another term in the Senate. And Steve Marshall in Alabama will claim Tommy Tuberville's seat, who's running for Senate, or running for governor, I mean. And in Tennessee, Bill Hagerty will win another term there. In Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen will win his first full term in the Senate. Remember, he won in a special election in 2022. And in Florida, it is too early to call. Ashley Moody, the Republican who was appointed to the seat after Marco Rubio left to become Secretary of State, she's running for re-election. And in Maine, we have a very tight race here between Susan Collins, the incumbent Republican in a very Democratic state, running against Graham Plattner, a oyster farmer with no political experience, the nominee of the Democrats. In New Hampshire, this is an open seat. This is Jean Shaheen's seat. She is retiring. This is Chris Pappas versus Scott Brown. Let's take an updated look at the Senate map. Republicans still have a 2-seat lead over the Democrats, 33-35. 51 seats are needed for majority. And taking a look at the governor races, in Maryland, Wes Moore will win another term. He will also probably run for president. In Massachusetts, Maura Healey will win another term. She might be a presidential contender. In Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, an almost certain 2028 contender, he has won another term by a strong margin. In Rhode Island, it will be Dan McKee who wins another term. Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, the senator, will win his first term as governor, defeating Will Boyd. In Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn will win another term. In Oklahoma, Genter Drummond will defeat Cindy Munson to become the next governor of Oklahoma. Kevin Stitt is retiring. In Connecticut, we have an increasingly race that has become increasingly competitive in this last stretch of the election. The incumbent governor, Ned Lamont, barely won his primary against a random state rep, Josh Elliott, but he is coming out as the Democratic nominee, facing off against the state senator, Ryan Fazio. This race is too early to call there in Connecticut. In the state of Maine, we have Shenna Bellows, the Secretary of State, running against Jonathan Bush, yes, a relative of the Bush family, too early to call. In New Hampshire, Tom Sherman and Kelly Ayotte, the incumbent governor, too early to call there. In Pennsylvania, we have the very popular incumbent Democrat Josh Shapiro trying to win another term against the state treasurer, Stacey Garrity. And then in Florida, we have quite an interesting race there. Ron DeSantis is term limited. He is not running again. The Republicans put up Byron Donalds. Meanwhile, the Democrats endorsed the bid of a state senator as an independent. I forget his first name. Mr. Pizzo. And this is what the updated gubernatorial map looks like. 8 for Democrats, 13 seats for Republicans. And in the U.S. House, we have major updates here. Republicans have only expanded their lead, actually. It is now 77 to 95 in favor of the Republican Party. It is now time for the 8:30 p.m. poll closings in the state of Arkansas. And in Florida, we have a key race alert. We can already project in a large win for the Florida Republican Party. Ashley Moody will win her first full term in the Senate, defeating Jennifer Jenkins. And in Arkansas, Tom Cotton is the projected winner, defeating Natalie James. And in the U.S. Senate, Republicans have expanded their lead to 4 over the Democrats, 33 to 37 now. And in Arkansas, in their gubernatorial race, we can project that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the winner, defeating Frederick Love. And this is what the updated House map looks like. Now Democrats are down by 20 seats. This is a good night so far in the House for the Republicans. Democrats should at least have a few more by now, but we will see how this shapes out throughout the night. 218 seats are needed for majority. Republicans are exactly halfway there. And let's take a look at the magic wall now. In the state of Ohio, you have Sherrod Brown trying to reclaim his seat in the Senate. Well, not his seat, but a seat in the Senate. This is shaping up to be a very tight race. John Husted only up by 2.6 percentage points, 50.8% for Husted, 48.2% for Brown. But look at that eastern portion of the state. Lots of counties not reporting any votes, and those are all Republican counties. It is now time for the 9 p.m. poll closings across the Midwest, as well as the Blue Wall, plus the state of New York. And in Kansas, we can project Roger Marshall in their Senate race will win another term. In South Dakota, Senator Mike Rounds will win another term there. In Wyoming, Senator Cynthia Loomis will win another term. And in Colorado, John Hickenlooper will win another term in the Senate. In New Mexico, Ben Ray Lujan, the incumbent Democratic senator, he will win another term as well, defeating Nella Domenici. This was supposed to be at least a little tighter than the result that we're seeing so far. And in Iowa, we have Joni Ernst facing an uphill battle against the Democratic challenger, Josh Turek. This one has really narrowed up in these last final weeks. Joni Ernst, one of the most unpopular senators in the United States. And in Louisiana, Chuck Schumer got a big win when he was able to draft the former governor, the moderate John Bel Edwards, to run against the Republican incumbent Bill Cassidy. We will see if the popularity of Bel Edwards as governor will translate into a Senate victory, or at least coming close there. In Michigan, this is an open seat left by the incumbent Democrat Gary Peters, who's retiring. We have Mike Rogers running again for the seat, the Republican. And after a very tight primary, a very brutal primary, Abdul El-Sayed came out as the winner in Michigan as the Democratic nominee. In Minnesota, the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan running against Royce White, who's once again trying to claim the seat, too early to call. In Texas, we had Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, actually unseat John Cornyn as the Republican nominee, John Cornyn being the incumbent Republican senator from the state. He was ousted in his own primary. Paxton is now the nominee. He's facing off against Beto O'Rourke, once again making his third statewide bid in Texas. In Nebraska, once again, Dan Osborne, the independent, is the choice of Nebraska Democrats. Like 2024, he is now running against Pete Ricketts, the incumbent Republican. And now in the U.S. Senate, it is tied 42 to 42, Democrats and Republicans. It is now a dead heat, razor-thin race in the U.S. Senate. Both parties are 9 seats away from majority. And in Connecticut, we have a key race alert in their gubernatorial election. We can now project that Ned Lamont, it ended up being not as close as polls indicated. Ned Lamont will win that race there, defeating Ryan Fazio, the state senator. In Maine, Shanna Bellows will defeat Jonathan Bush by a wide margin. This was not close at all. In Minnesota, Tim Walz will win another term, perfectly setting him up for a 2028 presidential bid. In New York, Kathy Hochul will defeat Elise Stefanik handily. In Colorado, the Senator Michael Bennet has been elected governor, defeating Greg Lopez. And in New Mexico, the former Secretary of Homeland, or the former Interior Secretary, that is, under Biden, Deb Haaland, she has won her first term as New Mexico's governor. In New Hampshire, Kelly Ayotte will win re-election as a Republican. This is a key race alert, defeating Tom Sherman. In Nebraska, Jim Pillen will win his second term in office, defeating Carol Blood. In South Dakota, Dusty Johnson, the U.S. Representative for South Dakota, will win the gubernatorial election, defeating Robert Arnold. And in Kansas, Jeff Koiler will win his first term. In Wyoming, Harriet Hageman will win her first term as well. In Iowa, this is shaping up to be a very, very, very tight race. Randy Feenstra, the representative, the U.S. representative, is facing off against the state auditor, I believe, Rob Sand, the Democrat who has proven a very electable candidate in years past. In Michigan, we have a three-way race for governor. The Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, versus the U.S. Representative, John James, versus the former mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan, who's running as an independent, a former Democrat. We'll see how this race goes. That's an interesting one for sure. In Wisconsin, we have I believe, this is the Lieutenant Governor Rodriguez against Tom Tiffany, the U.S. Representative. In Texas, we have the incumbent Greg Abbott running against the famed state rep James Tallarico, who has become a symbol for Democrats nationwide, even at such a low-level position as a state rep. In Arizona, Katie Hobbs, the incumbent Democrat, running for re-election against U.S. Rep. Andy Biggs. And this is what the gubernatorial map looks like. Democrats narrowing that gap just a bit, 15 to 19 seats. In the U.S. House, Democrats are still lagging behind, 137 to 161, but things might be looking better for them than we thought. The first flip of the night is a flip for Democrats. Jen Kagan's in Virginia's 2nd Congressional District has been ousted by the Democratic challenger. That is the first flip tonight. And let's take a look at the magic wall once again now. In North Carolina, where Roy Cooper has a very small lead ahead of Michael Whatley, just 0.8 percentage points, that's just 36,000 votes out of over 3 million cast. This is shaping up to be a razor-thin race in North Carolina. It is now 10 p.m. and we have poll closings in Nevada, Montana, and Utah. In the state of Maine, this is a huge, huge projection we can now make. In Maine, we can project that Graham Plattner will flip that seat, Susan Collins, Republican, to Graham Plattner, Democrat. This is the first flip in the Senate tonight, and it will be for the Democratic Party. Chuck Schumer and establishment Democrats were terrified after Graham Plattner won the primary, the Democratic primary, against the governor, Janet Mills. And he is proving to be the strongest, it looks like, possible Democrat Democrats could have drafted for this seat, could have nominated for this seat, because just look at this margin. We can project this race with 86% of the vote in. Graham Plattner projected to win by 12 percentage points, 77,000 votes. Remember, 6 years ago in 2020, Susan Collins won by 8 points. So this is going from 8 for Susan Collins to 12 for Graham Plattner, a huge win for Maine Democrats. In Minnesota, we can project that Peggy Flanagan will win that Senate seat. And in Montana, Steve Daines is the projected winner, a re-election for him. And for the first time tonight, Democrats have taken the lead in the Senate, 44 to 43. They are now in a much better position with that huge win in Maine, that huge flip. And we do have breaking news coming out of Maine. Susan Collins says she is deeply concerned with the election results tonight. She says she still has hope she could win even after all the projections that she lost. However, she is deeply concerned with the results. That is what she is saying right now. And in Florida, we have a key race alert. In that gubernatorial race, Byron Donalds will defeat Jason Pizzo, that independent state senator. by 5.3%. This is a very strong margin. Apparently, Florida Democrats, if they don't have that D label, they run as independents, they can be a lot more successful. In South Carolina, Nancy Mace is the projected winner. She will become the next governor of South Carolina, defeating Jermaine Johnson. This is a much better race for Republicans than is the Senate race there. Remember, Stephen Colbert versus Lindsey Graham. We're still waiting on results from that race. And in Nevada, the incumbent Republican Joe Lombardo is fighting for re-election against Aaron Ford. And in the gubernatorial races, Republicans still have a strong lead, 21-15, but remember, a majority of governors doesn't really matter for anything. And in the U.S. House of Representatives, it is only better for the Republican Party, 182 seats for Republicans, 147 for Democrats, a strong lead for Republicans there. But look at the West Coast. No California, no Oregon, and no Washington yet. When those results come in, that will be a huge boost for Democrats. And let's take a look at the Magic Wall in the state of Michigan in their Senate race. Mike Rogers has a narrow lead, 51.2% for Mike Rogers, 48.8% for Abdul El-Sayed. 39% of all votes are reported there. And in Ohio, 71% of all votes are in. Tim Ryan with a strong lead with 71% of votes in. This is where you want to be if you're the Democrats here. 43.2% for Tim Ryan, just 47% for Vivek Ramaswamy. Tim Ryan already flipping 2 counties that Harris lost in 2024. It is now time for the 11 p.m. poll closings on the West Coast plus Idaho. We have a major projection, key race alert in the state of Georgia. We can project here that Jon Ossoff is the projected winner in Georgia. He will win re-election to the Senate, defeating the football coach Derek Dooley. This is a major win for Democrats here, puts them in a much better position when it comes to winning back control of the Senate. 51.6% for Jon Ossoff, 47.7% for Derek Dooley. That is a huge win, 4-point win for Jon Ossoff there. In New Hampshire, Chris Pappas will take Jeanne Shaheen's seat, defeating Scott Brown. In Oregon, Jeff Merkley will win another term there. In Louisiana, however, we can project that even with John Bel Edwards, the former governor, running, Bill Cassidy, the incumbent Republican, he will win re-election. In Idaho, Jim Risch, the 81-year-old, will win another 6-year term in the Senate. And taking a look at the Senate, Democrats have only expanded their lead. 51 seats are needed for majority. Democrats have 47. Republicans have 45. Democrats are 4 seats away from majority. Republicans are 5. Why do they only need 50 seats? Well, hey, they have the vice presidency. The president and the Senate cast the tie-breaking vote when a tie occurs. We only have a handful of seats that we have not projected yet. In Ohio, we have a key race alert in that gubernatorial race. We can now project that Tim Ryan will win that election against Vivek Ramaswamy. This is a flip for the Democrats in Ohio. Look at that, a 2.1% win for Tim Ryan. This is a good sign for Sherrod Brown in the Senate as well. This means that Sherrod Brown could win. That's an 86,000 vote win for Tim Ryan. He will be the next governor of Ohio. In Pennsylvania, we can now project the popular Josh Shapiro will defeat Stacey Garrity, wins the re-election there by a strong margin, 8 points in the state of Pennsylvania. He will probably run for president in 2028. In Idaho, Brad Little will win another term, incumbent Republican there. In Oregon, Tina Kotek, her first bid, that was tough, but she will win re-election by a stronger margin now. In California, Katie Porter will succeed Gavin Newsom to become the next governor of California. Newsom is term limited. Katie Porter, the former U.S. representative, will win California's gubernatorial race. And taking a look at the updated governor's map, Democrats are still down, but by less seats now, 19-22. And looking at the U.S. House of Representatives, it is now tied with the West Coast reporting. It is now tied 194-194. It is coming down to the wire. 218 are needed to win. Both parties 24 seats away from victory. In Texas, we have a very interesting race shaping up here, where Ken Paxton does have a lead, but it is tight, 49.5% to Beto O'Rourke's 48.5%. But look at that third-party candidate, of the American Party. Remember, this is Elon Musk's party. He really hasn't done much with it except run and get on the ballot. This rancher, Alexander Duncan, from northern Texas, who ran in the Republican primary in that Paxton versus Cornyn primary. He ran in that. He lost it. He was drafted by Elon Musk to run from his America Party. The America Party isn't doing much this year at all. This is really their only effort, is trying to elect Alexander Duncan. It clearly has not been successful. He is at 2% and winning only 2 counties, actually the 2 least populated counties in Texas. However, that 2% could be huge in a race so razor thin as this one. We will see how that shapes out. It is now 12 a.m. midnight on the East Coast, and Alaska's polls are now closing. We have a major projection in North Carolina's Senate seat, another flip for the Democratic Party. Roy Cooper, the former governor, will be elected North Carolina's next senator. He will win against Michael Whatley by an impressive 4.8 percentage points as of now. Probably end up by 5 at the end of the night. A huge win for Senate Democrats, for Michael Whatley. Chuck Schumer was able to draft Roy Cooper to run, and it has clearly been successful. And let's take a look at Iowa, where Joni Ernst has won another term, a very narrow re-election bid against Josh Turek. In Alaska, it is too early to call. At this point, the former U.S. Representative Mary Peltola was convinced to run by Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats. She's facing off against the incumbent Republican there, Dan Sullivan. And taking a look at the updated U.S. Senate races, Democrats still have a lead, 48-46. Democrats now just 3 seats away from majority. Republicans are 4. And in Wisconsin, Sarah Rodriguez, the lieutenant governor, will win. Her first term as governor. Tony Evers is retiring here, defeating Tom Tiffany. In Alaska, it is too early to call. Remember, they have ranked choice voting, so we start with a bunch of candidates, and it will end up between 2, and then a winner will be decided there. It is mainly between, only 4. They in the blanket primary earlier this year, 4. The top 4 candidates were to advance to the general. These are the 4, 1 Democrat and 3 Republicans. And for the first time tonight, Democrats have taken the lead in the U.S. House of Representatives. 205 seats for the Democrats, 196 for the Republicans. Democrats have been down this entire night, but they may just be coming back at the perfect point in time. They're now just 13 seats away from majority. It is now 1 a.m. on the East Coast. The next day is now Wednesday, and Hawaii's polls are closing. We have a huge projection in the state of Michigan. We can project that in Michigan, Democrats will hold that very competitive Senate seat. Abdul El-Sayed defeating Mike Rogers there in Michigan. 50.4% for Abdul El-Sayed, 48.5% for Mike Rogers. A narrow win, but a win at that 2-point win for Abdul El-Sayed. A crucial hold for Democrats there. And after a long fought battle, Stephen Colbert will lose in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham, the incumbent senator, will win re-election there in South Carolina. 51.3 for Lindsey Graham, 48.7 for Stephen Colbert. Colbert certainly did come closer than many expected, losing by only 45,000 votes. And in the U.S. Senate, it is still a 2-point lead for Democrats, 49-47. Democrats now just 2 seats away from majority. If they win Alaska, Texas, or Ohio, if they win 2 out of 3 of those, then they win control of the Senate. And in Georgia, Jeff Duncan will flip that gubernatorial seat. Sorry, I shouldn't say Senate. This is a governor's race. He will flip that seat there in Georgia. He will defeat Burt Jones, there in Georgia. And in Hawaii, Josh Green will win another term there. He will probably run for president. And it is now tied for the first time tonight in how many gubernatorial seats each party holds, 22-22. That's a crucial flip for Democrats there in Georgia. That'll be huge. And in the U.S. House of Representatives, Democrats are approaching victory. They're flipping seat after seat. Look at Iowa's 1st District. Marionette Miller Meeks is out. Look at Wisconsin's 3rd District. Rebecca Cook has defeated Derek Van Orden. Flip after flip tonight for Democrats. They're now just 5 seats away from majority. Republicans are stuck at 196. And these are all the House flips tonight. Democrats have flipped 8 so far. Republicans zip. We have breaking news. We have a major projection in the U.S. Senate, and that is that Republicans will not control the Senate after the 2026 elections. Now, does this mean that Democrats will take control? No, it does not necessarily mean that just yet, and we will see why in just a second. In Texas, this is a huge call. Beto O'Rourke will win that Senate seat in the state of Texas, a flip for the Democratic Party, defeating Ken Paxton by a narrow 0.7 percentage points there. Alexander Duncan sinking the Republicans in this Senate seat. Beto O'Rourke will go on to be the next senator from Texas. A major mistake from Republicans nominating Ken Paxton, a historically weak candidate. And in Nebraska, this is why we can't project that Democrats will take control of the Senate, but we can project that Republicans will not. In Nebraska, we can project that the independent labor union leader Dan Osborne will flip this seat red to purple, defeating Pete Ricketts. He will win 50.2% of the vote. Look at that, 2,534 votes ahead, 50.2 to 49.8, a 0.4% win in the state of Nebraska, practically nothing. So as you could see, we have Ohio and we have Alaska left. Now, if Democrats win any of those two, they win majority just like that. But even if Republicans win both of those, they will be stuck at 49. They need 50 for a majority, with that Dan Osborne seat locking them out of majority. Republicans will not control the Senate. And in Iowa, we can now project, continuing with this blue wave of elections nationwide, Rob Sand will win that election there, defeating the U.S. Rep. Randy Feenstra. He will win by 1.6 percentage points. That's just 19,000 votes out of over a million cast. 1.2% win for Rob Sand in that seat. And in Michigan, we can project in three-way race, Jocelyn Benson will very narrowly come out as the winner against John James and Mike Duggan. In Arizona, Katie Hobbs will defeat Andy Biggs, winning another full term. This is a relatively narrow race compared to, this is actually a big win compared to her 2022 win against Carrie Lake. Let's see, this is about a 2.5% win there in Arizona for Katie Hobbs. And this is what the gubernatorial map looks like now. Democrats have taken a strong lead. 25 seats for the Democrats, just 22 for the Republicans. This is an absolute blue wave nationwide. Just look at that map. And we have a major projection in the U.S. House of Representatives. Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives for the first time since the 2020 elections. Democrats will control the U.S. Senate after the 2026 midterms. We can project they now have won 224 seats, 6 more than they need. Republicans still at 197. They are on track to exceed their 2018 numbers, a historically large blue wave. We have a major projection in the U.S. Senate. Democrats have taken majority in the U.S. Senate for the first time since a while ago. Ohio, Sherrod Brown will win that Senate seat. This is a flip for the Democratic Party. Sherrod Brown will return back to the Senate, defeating incumbent Republican John Husted. This is huge for Democrats, but not unexpected, looking at how other things went for Democrats this election. A 0.2% victory for Sherrod Brown there in Ohio. A very tight win. That's just 8,000 votes out of over, almost, 4 million cast. Incredibly tight race there. Sherrod Brown will reclaim a Senate seat. And in Alaska, for the first time since I don't know how long, Democrats will win a Senate seat in Alaska, probably since Mike Revelle in like the 80s. Mary Peltola has flipped Alaska's Senate seat. She will defeat Dan Sullivan. This is now an absolute landslide for Democrats across the country. 52 Senate seats for the Democrats, 47 for the Republicans, and 1 independent. This is the largest lead in the Senate Democrats have had, this 5-point margin, since 2012. 14 years ago was the last time Democrats had this big of a lead of a margin in the Senate. But looking at gubernatorial races, we do have a bittersweet ending for Democrats, as James Tallarico, the beloved state rep in Texas, has lost to Greg Abbott. Even as Beto O'Rourke won against Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott has proved too strong of a candidate. He has beaten James Tallarico by 0.4%, just 32,000 out of basically 8 million votes cast. And in Nevada, we can project Joe Lombardo is the winner there. Even amid a blue wave, the so popular Joe Lombardo is simply untouchable. He will defeat Aaron Ford. And in Alaska, after the ranked choice voting tabulations, Nancy Dahlstrom, the incumbent lieutenant governor, will win her first term as governor there in Alaska. This is the final gubernatorial map. It'll end in a tie, 25-25, Democrat and Republican. This is the most seats Democrats have, gubernatorial seats they have, since 2009. An absolute major blue wave for Democrats across the country. And then, of course, we have the U.S. House of Representatives, 235-199. Every seat has been called. This is how it'll end. A huge win for Democrats in the House of Representatives. They have major wiggle room of 36 seats. And this is just a shock to the system. In North Carolina's 11th congressional district, out of nowhere, Democrats have flipped this rural district. Mo Davis has won in this very rapidly left, turning district, defeating Chuck Edwards by, get this, 67 votes. This next 2 years will come down to 67 votes in North Carolina's 11th district, 50.0 to 50.0. And President Trump is already blatantly claiming that the election was rigged by Democrats, while John Thune is not having it. He is accepting defeat in this election, and pretty graciously, actually. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. It was super fun to make. Again, this was a dream scenario for Democrats and nothing more than that. Again, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.